Michigan dominated Penn State 41-17. That score indicates a blowout, but it really wasn't even that close. I was in attendance for the maze-out domination with my brother Brian and my nephew Isaac's 17th birthday. This was my second game ever at the Big House, the first one being in 2016 against Indiana in the Blizzard game. It wasn't a blizzard on Saturday against Penn State. The wind was whipping a little bit, but overall it was a nice day for football. After we got done trolling Urban Meyer a little bit over at Big Noon Kickoff, we went inside to watch some warm-ups and find our seats in Section 16. There were a lot of players and coaches honored at the game, including Lloyd Carr, Aiden Hutchinson, and Charles Woodson and the entire 1997 National Championship team. Michigan got the ball first and were able to move the ball well down the field with a nice mix of runs and passes, but they had to settle for a Jake Moody field goal. On Penn State's first possession, it was evident they were going to have a tough time running the ball against this stout Michigan defense. They went 3 and out, giving the ball right back to the Wolverines. The Wolverines started their second drive on the 17-yard line and were quickly to midfield after a beautiful 35-yard pass to Cornelius Johnson. A 6-minute drive stalled inside the 5-yard line, and another Jake Moody field goal made it 6-0. Penn State went 3 and out again, so they had a grand total of 14 yards in their first 2 drives. One nice thing about being at the game is that you have the stats right in front of you the whole time on the scoreboard, so it was nice to see the dominant stats piling up in Michigan's favor. So how would Michigan do on drive number 3? Even though Penn State wasn't able to move the ball at all so far, Michigan couldn't really settle for 3 field goals on its first 3 drives, and they didn't. The Wolverines marched down the field, largely led by the running game, and Blake Corum scored a touchdown to put Michigan up 13-0. And then it got weird. The entire stadium was fooled on a keeper by Sean Clifford. He rumbled 62 yards all the way down to the Michigan 4-yard line, and Penn State scored a couple plays later. Okay, one fluke play, we can live with that because Penn State has not been able to move the ball at all otherwise. But then, on a 3rd and 2, J.J. McCarthy throws a pass that hits off a defender's helmet and is intercepted for a pick 6. What just happened? It went from being 13-0 Michigan to 14-13 Penn State. Like that. Michigan was killing Penn State in time of possession, yards, first downs, everything, but the scoreboard said 14-13 Penn State. The Big House was insanely loud on Penn State's first 2 possessions, but it was pretty quiet now. Once again, Michigan was able to march right down the field and got another Jake Moody field goal before the half to take the lead back going into the locker room. At the half, I felt pretty good. Michigan was able to move the ball at will, and Penn State really couldn't do much. The Wolverines had 18 first downs to Penn State's 1, and if it wasn't for 2 crazy plays, it wouldn't even be close. Penn State started the second half with a pretty decent drive. Sean Clifford made a couple of plays, including a beautiful 48-yard pass to Harrison Wallace, but Michigan held the Nittany Lions to 3. So Penn State regained the lead, but it would be short-lived, and they would never get it back. Donovan Edwards ripped off a 67-yard touchdown run, and then on the very next offensive play for Michigan, Blake Corum took one to the house from 61 yards out. And if either running back got touched on those 2 runs, it was barely touched. Michigan's ground game could not be stopped. Money Moody hit 1 more field goal, and Donovan Edwards scored 1 more touchdown. Final score, Michigan 41, Penn State 17. I highly doubt that any Penn State fans are watching this, but if you are, it might be time to look away because I'm going to read some team stats. Penn State did end up getting 10 first downs in the game after only having, 1 or 2 in the first half, and Michigan finished with 28 first downs. Total yards, Michigan 563 to Penn State's 268. Penn State did have more passing yards than Michigan, 157 to 145, but here we go. Rushing yards, Michigan 418 on the ground. Penn State 111, and 62 of those were on Clifford's 1 run. And this is how Michigan beats you. Time of possession, 41 minutes and 56 seconds for Michigan to Penn State's 18:04. Running the ball, time of possession, wearing you down. Sean Clifford was 7 for 19 for 120 yards. Aller was 5 of 10 for 37 yards. Clifford did lead the Nittany Lions in rushing with 74 yards. Again, 62 of those came on 1 run. Wallace and Tinsley both had 57 yards receiving. J.J. McCarthy really didn't have to do that much. 17 for 24, again, very efficient. 145 yards, and he did have that pick 6. Last year, Michigan had Thunder and Lightning with Haskins and Corum. This year, it's Lightning and Lightning. Corum and Edwards. Donovan Edwards had 16 carries for 173 yards and 2 touchdowns. Blake Corum, 28 carries, 166 and 2 touchdowns. And McCarthy had 57 yards on the ground, 418 yards, averaging 7.6 per carry, and 4 touchdowns. Again, Michigan didn't have to do much through the air. Cornelius Johnson had 43 yards, 35 of them coming on one play. On defense, Rod Moore led the way with 5 total tackles, 3 solo tackles. And freshman Will Johnson had 2 tackles, including a big one on quarterback Sean Clifford. The only negative thing to me in this game was Michigan's red zone offense, especially early in the game. You'd like to see Michigan be a little more efficient instead of settling for field goals when they get into the red zone. But hey, they did score every time they got in the red zone, and Brad Robbins never had to punt once in this whole game. The biggest takeaway from this game is that Michigan will punch you in the mouth. Penn State came into the game with the 5th ranked run defense, but by the time Michigan was done with them, they're down in the 50s now. Michigan still wants to play bully ball. If they can run the ball on you, they're going to run the ball on you. Will we see Michigan throw the ball a little more in upcoming games? Maybe. But maybe not if they don't have to. J.J. McCarthy did make a couple of questionable decisions in this game, but when you can run the ball like that, who cares? There aren't many defenses out there that will be able to stop Michigan's ground game. And before you say, well, Georgia last year, that was a historically good defense. That Georgia defense is one of the best of all time. So who this season is Michigan going to have trouble running on? Who? Up next is a bye week, and then it's a blue out against Sparty. Time to get revenge. In this video right here, we'll explain why I think that game is the most important game for Michigan this season. Just watch it. And go blue.